Okay. This is the second video on the domains of the composition of two functions. In the first video, we learned that when we want to compose two functions, say g of f, and think about the domain, in order for an x value to be in the domain of this function, at the very least, it must be in the domain of f, right? It has to be in the domain of the first function that we apply to the x value. I have two different functions up on the board. Let's go ahead and investigate the domain of the composition when we are using these two functions. So let's consider g of f at 4. Okay. So again, we are going to take f and apply it to 4, and then apply g to the result. Well, f of 4, substitute that in, you get 2. And then to compute g of 2, of course, take 2, put it into your function g, and we get 1/2. So when we put 4 into this function, we get a real number out. And so 4 is in the domain. Let's consider another x value. Let's compute g of f when x is equal to 2. And so I'm going to take f of 2 and apply g to the result. F of 2 is 0. I want to take 0 and plug it into my function g. That would be 1/0, which is not a real number. Okay? So 2 cannot be in the domain of g of f because we don't get a single real number out. In the first video, the problem or the thing to be concerned about that we pointed out was that the x value had to be in the domain of f. Here, 2 is definitely in the domain of f. But the problem is that f of 2 is not in the domain of g. And that is our second requirement for the domain of the composition of two functions, right? X must be in the domain of f. We learned that from the first video. This example is telling us that f of x must be in the domain of g, right? It is a two-step consideration. In order for x to be in the domain of the composition, it must be in the domain of the first function, and the image has to be in the domain of the second function, right? Again, just think of the universal picture for composition. Right? We apply f to some element x, get a result, and then apply g to that result. So x must be in the domain of f, and f of x must be in the domain of g. So in the next video, we'll look at applying these rules to particular examples.